In the early 2000s, Michael Jackson warned the people closest to him that something terrible was about to happen. They laughed. They doubted him. Some even told him he was being dramatic. But days later, the tragedy unfolded in front of cameras, fans, and the entire world, exactly the way Michael had described. What did he know? Who did he try to protect? And why did no one listen? This is the story they wish they had taken seriously. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson sat in the corner of the rehearsal studio, watching the dancers move in silence. The music was loud, the lights were bright, the room was full of energy, yet something inside him felt unbearably wrong. He hadn't slept the night before. He kept replaying the same feeling in his chest. Not fear, not panic, something colder. Certainty. When the music stopped, Michael stood up. "Turn it off," he said. The dancers froze. The choreographer looked confused. "Michael, we're in the middle of—" "Please," Michael insisted. "Turn it off." The room fell silent. Michael walked to the center of the floor, his hands trembling slightly. "I need to tell you something," he said. Everyone watched him. "I don't know how to explain it," Michael continued. "But something bad is coming. Very bad." A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. "What kind of bad?" the choreographer asked. Michael swallowed. "Public. Painful. And someone is going to get hurt." Someone in the back laughed nervously. "You mean a bad headline?" Michael shook his head. "No, I mean a tragedy." The room went quiet. "Michael," the choreographer said gently, "you've been under a lot of stress." Michael met his eyes. "This isn't stress. This is a warning." Later that night, Michael called his longtime assistant. "I need you to cancel everything for next week," he said. "Everything?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" Michael hesitated. "Because something is about to happen, and I don't want anyone I love near it." She paused. "Michael, what are you talking about?" "I just know." The next morning, he called his mother. "Catherine, please listen to me," he said. "Something terrible is coming. Promise me you'll stay home. Don't go out. Don't travel." She was silent for a moment. "Michael, sweetheart, are you okay?" "I am, but the world won't be." She tried to calm him, but he insisted. By the end of the week, several people had heard his warning. Most of them smiled and said the same thing. "You're worrying too much." Michael stopped trying to convince them. He began writing letters instead. Private notes, instructions, apologies for things he had never done wrong. The night before the tragedy, Michael sat alone in his room, staring at the city lights. He whispered, "I tried to tell them." Outside, the world slept. Inside Michael Jackson, something was already breaking. And what happened next would change everything. Forever. The morning arrived without warning. No thunder. No sirens. Just a pale sky over Los Angeles and the ordinary rhythm of a city that had no idea what was about to witness. Michael woke before dawn, his chest heavy with the same certainty that had followed him for days. He did not turn on the television. He did not check the news. He sat on the edge of his bed and listened to the quiet, as if the quiet itself were trying to tell him goodbye. At 8:41 a.m., his phone rang. It was his assistant. "Michael, have you seen the news?" "No," he said calmly. There was a pause on the line. "There's been an accident. A major one. Downtown." Michael closed his eyes. "Who's involved?" he asked. "A tour bus. A stage crew. Several people from the production company you were supposed to meet tomorrow." The room felt suddenly too small. "Are they alive?" Michael whispered. "Some. Not all." Michael's hand trembled against the phone. He hung up without another word and turned on the television. The images were already everywhere. A crushed bus, broken equipment, flashing lights, people crying into microphones. Reporters spoke in urgent tones. A tragic accident this morning involving the production team preparing for the upcoming event. Michael's knees buckled, and he sat down. The exact production team he had begged to delay. the exact location he had warned about, the exact day he had asked everyone to stay away from. His phone exploded with calls. Managers, friends, lawyers, people who had smiled at him when he tried to warn them. One message from the choreographer appeared on his screen. "You tried to tell us." Michael stared at it for a long time. He didn't answer. He couldn't. He spent the next hours in silence, pacing the house, watching the news without really seeing it, hearing the names of the injured and the dead like distant echoes. By noon, the tragedy had reached every corner of the world. Michael sat in his living room with the curtains drawn. Catherine arrived, her face pale. "You knew," she said softly. Michael nodded. "I felt it," he whispered. "I felt it in my bones." She sat beside him and held his hand. "They're saying it was unavoidable," she said. Michael shook his head. It wasn't. His phone rang again. This time it was the producer, who had laughed when Michael warned him. "Michael, I'm so sorry," the man said. "I should have listened." Michael closed his eyes. "People are hurt," Michael replied. "That's what matters now." He hung up. That afternoon, Michael requested the names of every injured crew member and their families. He wrote letters, personal ones. He called hospitals. He paid medical bills without telling anyone. He did not allow a single camera near him. The world saw headlines. Michael saw faces. One family refused to believe it when they heard his voice on the phone. "You're really him?" the woman asked through tears. "Yes," Michael said, "and I'm so sorry." That night, the house was quiet again. Michael sat alone at the piano, playing soft notes that barely existed, his hands shaking, his heart too full of grief for sound. He whispered, "Why didn't they listen?" But the answer didn't come. Only the weight of knowing that sometimes warnings arrive without proof, and proof arrives too late. Outside, the city moved on. Inside Michael Jackson, something had changed forever, because this time, he hadn't just felt the future. He had watched it break, and the world would never look at him the same way again. The days that followed felt unreal, like the world had tilted slightly and never fully settled back into place. Michael barely slept. When he did, he dreamed of the rehearsal room, the warning, the dancers' faces, the moment he had tried to stop what no one believed could happen. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard his own voice repeating the words, "Something bad is coming." And then the images returned. The crush bus, the twisted metal, the names scrolling across the screen. He sat in his bedroom before dawn, the city still dark outside, his hands pressed together as if holding himself in one piece. "I tried," he whispered to no one. But trying was not enough to quiet the guilt. The families of the victims began reaching out. Some wanted answers. Some only wanted someone to hear them. Some simply cried on the phone while Michael listened, his heart breaking again and again. A man whose brother had died said through tears, "If they had listened to you, my brother would be alive." Michael closed his eyes so tightly it hurt. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Those words became his only language. He paid for funerals, for medical care, for counseling, for college funds for children who had lost parents. He did it quietly, through lawyers, without letting the press touch a single detail. But no amount of money could touch the weight he carried inside. One afternoon, Michael visited a small church where one of the funerals was being held. He entered through a side door unnoticed and sat in the back pew. The room was filled with the sound of crying. When the casket was closed, Michael bowed his head and whispered a promise. "I won't forget you." Outside, the media debated whether Michael's warning had been coincidence, intuition, or imagination. Some mocked it. Some questioned his mental state. Some dismissed it entirely. Michael did not respond. He stopped giving interviews, stopped attending public events, stopped explaining himself. He began walking alone at night, long, silent walks through his property, the stars overhead reminding him how small everything suddenly felt. One night, Catherine found him sitting on the porch, his face pale. "You can't carry this alone," she said. Michael shook his head. "I hear their voices." "Whose?" "The people I couldn't save." He pressed his palm against his chest. "They're in here." Weeks passed. The headlines faded, but the guilt did not. Michael began writing letters to the people who died, even though they would never be sent. He wrote their names, their stories, the way the tragedy had changed him. One night, while writing, his hand froze. He realized something that frightened him more than the tragedy itself. He no longer trusted the future. Every good moment felt fragile. Every laugh carried an echo of fear. Every plan seemed dangerous. The certainty that had once warned him now haunted him. He was afraid to feel anything. Then one afternoon, a young woman arrived at his gate. She was trembling when security called Michael. "She says her name is Sarah," the guard said. "Her father was on the bus." Michael's chest tightened. He told them to let her in. Sarah stood in the garden, holding a folded piece of paper. "I just wanted to meet you," she said. They sat on a bench beneath the trees. "I heard you tried to stop it," she said. Michael nodded. "My dad believed in signs," she continued. "He would have believed you." She handed Michael the paper. It was a drawing of her family. "He used to say that sometimes life breaks so it can show you what matters," she whispered. "He would want you to keep living." Michael looked at her through tears. After she left, Michael stayed on that bench until the sun went down. Something inside him shifted. He realized that guilt was slowly killing the part of him that could still help others. And if he let that happen, the tragedy would take even more than it already had. That night, he returned to the piano for the first time in weeks. He didn't play a song. He played his heart. And as the soft notes filled the room, Michael understood. The warning had not been given, so he could carry the guilt forever. It had been given, so he could choose what to do with the pain. And the choice he was about to make would change how the world remembered him. The melody lingered in the air long after Michael's fingers left the keys. He sat alone at the piano, the room dim, the echo of the final note still trembling inside him. For weeks he had avoided the space, afraid of what his own heart would say when he finally listened. But now he stayed, his eyes closed, breathing slowly, letting the grief and guilt settle into something he could hold without breaking. He stood and walked through the house, his footsteps soft against the floor, and felt the weight of decision forming inside him. The next morning he called his team. "I want to meet the families," he said. "All of them." There was silence on the line. "Michael, the press," someone began. "No cameras," he said. "No statements. Just me." They arranged it quietly. A small community center on the edge of the city. No reporters. No flashing lights. Just people who had lost something they would never get back. Michael arrived alone. He stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to the murmur of voices inside. He could turn around. No one would blame him. He walked in. The room fell quiet. Some people recognized him immediately. Others didn't notice at first. He saw faces marked by grief, eyes red from crying, hands clenched around tissues and photographs. Michael didn't give a speech. He moved from one person to the next. He listened. A mother told him about her son's laugh. A man spoke of his wife's cooking. A little boy held up a picture of his father in a hard hat and asked Michael if he was in heaven. Michael knelt and said, "I believe he is." They cried together. Hours passed. When it was over, Michael was exhausted, but something inside him felt clearer than it had in weeks. Before he left, he stood in front of them and said softly, "I can't undo what happened, but I will spend the rest of my life honoring those you lost." The promise changed him. He created a private fund for the victims' families. He paid for therapy, education, homes, medical care. He checked in on birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. He did not make it public. He did not ask for credit. The world outside continued its noise. Some called him strange. Some called him broken. Some said he was hiding from reality. Michael didn't answer. He was finally facing it. But the guilt still returned at night. One evening, Michael sat on the floor of his bedroom, his back against the bed, his head in his hands. "What if I had shouted louder?" he whispered. He fell asleep there. The next morning, Catherine found him and sat beside him. "You're not God," she said. "You're human." Michael's voice cracked. "It doesn't feel like enough." She took his hands. "What you're doing now is enough." Weeks passed. The families began writing him letters. Not about the tragedy. About their lives. One woman wrote, "My daughter smiled today for the first time since the accident. She says she wants to be a nurse." Michael read every letter. One night, he realized something had changed. The warning no longer haunted him. It guided him. He began working on a new project. Not an album, a foundation. Focused on safety in the entertainment industry, on mental health, on the unseen workers who kept the world moving. When his advisors questioned him, he said, "If I can prevent one family from feeling what they felt, it matters." But the world would soon demand answers, because the press had noticed Michael's silence, and they were about to force the story back into the light. The next chapter would push Michael into the spotlight he had tried to escape. The first camera appeared at the gate just after sunrise. By noon, there were 5. By evening, the street outside Michael's home looked like the opening night of premiere, except no one was smiling. Michael watched it all from the window, the curtains half drawn, the noise outside pressing against the glass like a storm that refused to pass. He had known this moment would come. The world never allows grief to remain private for long, especially when it belongs to someone it believes owns. His phone rang without pause. Producers, journalists, friends asking what he was going to say. Michael turned the phone off. He sat in the living room, hands folded, breathing slowly, reminding himself of the promise he had made to the families, to himself. Later that afternoon, Evan arrived, his face pale. "They're preparing a story," he said. "They found out about the fund, the families, the meetings." Michael nodded. "Let them. They're saying you predicted the tragedy." Michael closed his eyes. "They want your version." Michael opened his eyes. The truth is the truth. That evening, Michael walked into a small private studio. No audience, no flashing lights, just one camera. He sat down. When the red light came on, he did not smile. "I warned people," Michael said quietly, "not because I'm special, because I felt something was wrong and I listened." He spoke of the rehearsals, the sleepless nights, the calls he made, the laughter he received in return. He spoke of the tragedy. He spoke of the families. He spoke of the guilt. He did not defend himself. He did not dramatize. He ended with one sentence. "If you ever feel that something isn't right, listen. It may save someone's life." The interview aired that night. The world froze. Some called him prophetic. Some called him delusional. Some finally believed him. But everyone felt the weight of what he said. Michael did not watch it. He was at home, reading letters from the families. One woman wrote, "My son starts school next week. I wish you could see him smile." Michael closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." That night, he dreamed of the rehearsal room again. But this time the dancers stopped. This time they listened. He woke up crying. The world outside continued its arguments. Michael continued his work. The foundation launched quietly. Programs expanded. Lives were touched. But something inside Michael remained fragile. He still carried the faces of the lost. And the next time the world would test his strength, it would be when he least expected it, because the warning he had once given would come back to him in a new form. And this time, the choice would be even harder. Cliffhanger. Acquiesce o capítulo 5, com approximatum in 1200 palavras. Continuo isem interrupcos. Chapter 5, when the world demanded the truth. The first camera appeared at the gate just after sunrise. By noon, there were 5. By evening, the street outside Michael's home looked like the opening night of premiere, except no one was smiling. Michael watched it all from the window, the curtains half drawn, the noise outside pressing against the glass like a storm that refused to pass. He had known this moment would come. The world never allows grief to remain private for long, especially when it belongs to someone it believes it owns. His phone rang without pause. Producers, journalists, friends asking what he was going to say. Michael turned the phone off. He sat in the living room, hands folded, breathing slowly, reminding himself of the promise he had made to the families, to himself. Later that afternoon, Evan arrived, his face pale. "They're preparing a story," he said. "They found out about the fund, the families, the meetings." Michael nodded. "Let them. They're saying you predicted the tragedy." Michael closed his eyes. They want your version. Michael opened his eyes. The truth is the truth. That evening, Michael walked into a small private studio. No audience, no flashing lights, just one camera. He sat down. When the red light came on, he did not smile. I warn people, Michael said quietly, not because I'm special, because I felt something was wrong and I listened. He spoke of the rehearsals, the sleepless nights, the calls he made, the laughter he received in return. He spoke of the tragedy. He spoke of the families. He spoke of the guilt. He did not defend himself. He did not dramatize. He ended with one sentence. If you ever feel that something isn't right, listen. It may save someone's life. The interview aired that night. The world froze. Some called him prophetic. Some called him delusional. Some finally believed him. But everyone felt the weight of what he said. Michael did not watch it. He was at home, reading letters from the families. One woman wrote, "My son starts school next week. I wish you could see him smile." Michael closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." That night, he dreamed of the rehearsal room again. But this time the dancers stopped. This time they listened. He woke up crying. The world outside continued its arguments. Michael continued his work. The foundation launched quietly. Programs expanded. Lives were touched. But something inside Michael remained fragile. He still carried the faces of the lost. And the next time the world would test his strength, it would be when he least expected it, because the warning he had once given would come back to him in a new form. And this time, the choice would be even harder. The rain returned the same way it had the week of the tragedy. Quiet at first, then heavier, steady against the windows, as if the sky itself were trying to repeat a message the world had already ignored once. Michael noticed it immediately. He stood by the glass in the early morning, coffee untouched on the table, the city blurred beyond the drops, and felt that old sensation rising again in his chest. Not fear, not panic, the same cold certainty that had once walked him straight into the future and forced him to watch it break. He whispered, "No, not again." For weeks he had lived in a rhythm of purpose and restraint, balancing the work of the foundation with the promises he made to the families and the quiet discipline of protecting his own heart. He had believed the warning was behind him, that whatever part of him had sensed disaster had been burned away by grief. But the feeling was back now, sharper, closer, as if something were pressing against the inside of his ribs and asking him to listen. The phone rang. Michael did not answer at first. He pressed his palm against the glass and closed his eyes. The ringing stopped, then started again. When he finally picked up, it was Evan, his voice thin with urgency. "Michael, I need you to hear me. There's an event tomorrow night, the outdoor charity concert downtown. They're rushing to build. They skipped part of the safety inspection. I only just found out." Michael's stomach tightened. He looked out at the rain, the same slow rhythm, the same pressure in the air. "Where?" he asked. Evan told him the location. It was the same district as the accident, only a few blocks away. "Who's running it?" Michael asked. "A new promoter." Evan said, "They cut corners. They're behind schedule. I tried to slow them down, but they're pushing." Michael felt the certainty harden into something he could no longer ignore. "Stop it," he said. "Cancel it." "They won't listen to me," Evan replied. "They say the weather's clearing. The structure's fine. The inspection will pass in the morning." Michael closed his eyes. "I'm going there. You can't just—" "I'm going," Michael repeated, already reaching for his jacket. The drive through the rain felt like the past unfolding in reverse. Michael's hands were steady on the wheel, his heart loud in his ears, the city sliding by in gray streaks. When he arrived at the site, the crew was already working under temporary lights, scaffolding rising, cables draped across the ground. He parked, stepped out, and walked straight toward the center of the activity. A man in a hard hat moved to intercept him. "Sir, this area is restricted." Michael lifted his hood and met the man's eyes. Recognition flickered, then confusion. "I need to speak with whoever's in charge," Michael said. "Now." They brought him to promoter, a young man with a tablet and a schedule, rain dotting his jacket. Michael did not waste time. He told him about the feeling, about the last time, about what he believed was about to happen. He asked for the inspection reports. He asked for the weather updates. He asked if anyone had checked the foundation anchors after the last storm. The promoter laughed once, not unkindly, but dismissively. "Mr. Jackson, with respect, we're fine. We've done this 100 times. Michael leaned closer, so the rain would not steal his voice. "Please, slow it down. Push the event. 1 day, 1 hour, anything." The man shook his head. "We're locked in. Sponsors, press, donors. We can't move it." Michael felt the certainty burn. "You can," he said. "You just don't want to." The promoter's smile faded. "I'm sorry." Michael stepped back, the rain soaking through his clothes, the sounds of metal and machinery surrounding him, and felt the same helplessness he had felt before. He pulled out his phone and called the city's safety office. He described what he saw, what he felt, what he feared. They promised to send an inspector in the morning. "It might be too late," Michael said. He stood there until the rain lightened, watching the structure rise, every bolt and beam seeming to whisper the same warning. When he finally left, his chest hurt, not with panic, but with the weight of knowing what he had done and what he could not force the world to do with it. That night, he did not sleep. He sat at the piano in the dark and played nothing, his hands resting on the keys as if the instrument itself could hold him together. At dawn, he called Catherine. He told her where he had been, what he felt, what he feared. "Sometimes you carry too much," she said. "Sometimes it's mine to carry," he replied. By late afternoon, the rain had stopped. The sky cleared. The city prepared for the event. Michael turned on the television and watched the crews finish the stage. He saw the banners go up, the lights tested, the donors arrive. He texted Evan again, asking if there was any way to delay it. Evan replied that the inspection had been signed off. Michael closed his eyes. He drove back downtown before sunset and stood at the edge of the crowd as people gathered. Music tested the speakers. The air buzzed with anticipation. Michael felt out of place and invisible, the certainty now a quiet hum that would not leave him. He moved closer to the structure, studying the supports, the cables, the temporary roof stretched above the stage. He noticed the way the wind pressed against the fabric, the way the metal shuddered. He approached a crew member and asked if they had reinforced the anchors after the storm. The man shrugged. "It's fine," he said. Michael stepped back, the memory of twisted metal and flashing lights rushing through him. He felt the moment narrowing, like a tunnel drawing him forward. The concert began. Applause rose, cheers echoing, lights cutting the dusk. Michael stood with the crowd, his hands clenched, his eyes on the structure. 10 minutes passed. 20. He told himself he was wrong, that the certainty had finally betrayed him, that this time the future would not break. Then the wind shifted. It came suddenly, stronger than before, a sharp gust that rippled the fabric of the roof. The lights flickered. Michael's breath caught. Another gust followed, then another, each one louder, more insistent, the structure shuddering in response. He saw the anchor line snap free at the edge, the metal screaming as it tore. "Stop the show!" he shouted, his voice swallowed by the music in the crowd. The wind roared again. One of the support beams buckled. People screamed. Michael ran. He pushed through the crowd toward the stage, the sound of tearing fabric and twisting metal exploding around him. The roof gave way in one violent motion, collapsing toward the back of the stage as crew members scattered. Dust and debris filled the air. The music died. Sirens began to rise from somewhere far away. Michael reached the edge of the fallen structure and grabbed the arm of a young technician who had stumbled, pulling him clear as another beam dropped where he had been standing seconds before. The man stared at Michael, shocked, then ran. Security surged in, pushing people back. Michael coughed, his eyes burning, the certainty finally breaking into something like relief and horror all at once. This time, people had been hurt, but no one had died. Ambulances arrived. The crowd was evacuated. The stage lay in ruins under the open sky. Michael stood there shaking. The reins go still in the air. The future he felt finally unfolding in front of him, but not as completely as before. Later, As he sat on the curb with a blanket around his shoulders, a reporter approached, microphone trembling in her hand. "Mr. Jackson, witnesses say you were warning people moments before the collapse. How did you know?" Michael looked at the broken stage, the flashing lights, the paramedics moving with purpose. He thought of the first warning, the tragedy, the families, the promise he had made. "I listened," he said. "The world would argue again. Some would believe, some would not. But Michael knew the truth of what had happened, and the weight of it settled into him, not as guilt this time, but as resolve, because the warning had returned, and this time enough of the world had been spared to prove that listening could change the ending.